All right, it's August 5th, 2021. I went out with Alexander James, my son, and Benjamin and Daniel and Anthony last night, or Cat Scratch last night. This morning I wake up and there's this interesting piece on public access. Nobody's awake yet. And there's a gentleman, Eric, Ericdeggans, this man. He's saying he's an Eric. So now here's the thing. There's a reason why there's a set of English names spelled a certain way that look like myself. And then there's like gentlemen that look like this that are not to take on the same spelling, because it gets really confusing for everything globally that is trying to do something on a bigger scale to protect everyone when you start taking English names and wearing someone else's identity. There was supposed to be a mandatorium or a mandate, I don't know the word. But this gentleman who claims that this is how to spell his name says a story about something called a lie, being L-I-E. The way it looks in cryptography or calligraphy is like this. That is the word, L-I-E. L in Long Island, it's Long Island, and then it's E for East, but the E, when you are on a circle, if you start at the point E and you travel all the way around the circle, when you come back, the E is now in mirror image and it looks like a 3. Because you have to know, are you coming in from the east, the west? Like, in some places, this actually matters, and that's where you protect people from. So I know that it normally goes over everybody's head, but the small, minute details do matter. So here, he's speaking about print and news media being the television. So here's the thing, even the word, it's vision. They're telling a vision about the world. Most of the newscasters and anchors tell a vision about the world. The reason why I don't anchor and I'm not on public broadcast or the paid-for network advertising, they never asked me, first of all, but I wouldn't want to paint the world under biological attack any other way than what's needed by leadership. Last night I went over, my grandfather was U.S. Army, A-R-M-Y, in New York, stationed in New York. My grandmother, he died still within U.S. Army rank. I know there's a word called Belgrade. I'm the one who's born on the bell, but I don't want to get confusing. So, and my grandmother died as his wife, USA. She was under attack, which is where the anatomy A came from, but on home soil in New York. They call this the North America. Again, these geonatology reference marks get confusing, except I'm cross-eyed on my grandmother and grandfather's tombstone or cemetery marker. They both have a cross in white marble in a National Archive registry in the cemetery. So.
He'll just do more stuff for attention. But I do think, the fact that that worked generally speaks to a model where he was always going to get attention, I think. And I think that's kind of what the last week has shown to me. I think if Twitter didn't exist, or if he didn't use it, he would have just found other ways to dominate the conversation.
Well, let's move on to Trump's re-election campaign. What did the White House press corps do effectively? And how could the news media have held Trump and the White House more accountable? And we did touch on some of these in terms of picking and choosing, perhaps, which I realize it can be hard when your editor over your shoulder is saying, the competitor just reported on this tweet that you didn't do. So I'll throw it out to any of you. How effective you thought the White House press corps was?
Again, what is troubling to me about how the press coverage unfolded was that, you had different media universes going on. And, the world of cable news was covering him one way, the world of print newspapers was covering him another. We had stringent standards about how we were going to use the word lie, but eventually the things he was saying about the election were so obviously lies. Everybody's calling them lies.
It's too difficult to handle this many, like, variables.
That is
Right.
constantly validating what he says and criticizing other media outlets if they feel that they've undercovered what the president is doing. So it was a very tough needle to thread for journalists who were constantly trying to point out the excesses of his administration or the lies of his administration. It felt to me, by the time we got down to the election.
Right. Here's where this goes. There's the theoretical one White House with one white president. There's the theoretical one downed fighter jet in hypothetical situation of an area somewhere in a galaxy far, far from here that's like a Russian fighter jet in an Afghan strict territory, but in this modern New York loosey-goosey kind of a way. How would we handle that? Because it's no longer in a respectable nunnery habit of covering oneself, because it's modern day New York. So it's acceptable, but to other people in the world who might be brought into the conversation, it might be looked at one way, which you don't want to add problems to the conversation, which people do a lot just to get their way and get people to shut up and then force issues that weren't there originally. The children of New York have done a wonderful job at painting everything wrong on this television. Because I will tell you something. This, from 1978 until 2021, has never been discriminated against, ever. Not in New York. Not in Long Island. The other woman who was asking him questions, who had more of an Asian flavor, she has never been discriminated against, not ever, in Long Island. Not in my presence. Not that they've brought to me. They have never came to my face, personally told me a story of discrimination. Not ever. The people of the citizens of New York within the time frame of 1978 to 2021 have not done discriminatory acts against one another. However, they make television like they've never had nice people interacting with them ever that are my color, which I find really hard to believe. But that's the stance that they build their television from, and that's how they choose to lead their people, which is a really dangerous effect when I'm being biologically attacked, and there's this enhancement of biological technology, and they want to tell everyone, even their own people, all the wrong story, and then live by their sword and word, and then grow it more dangerously through government and jobs and agency and weaponry and so on and so forth. So now how do you want to handle that? All very dumb, fucking, and useless inside a human something or other at some point. I'm starting to deteriorate and debilitate horrifically. I don't even have the mental capacity. I get little windows of opportunity in order to make a point and point something out but then it goes into a very dark period where I can't even connect divinely or otherwise by inspiration. I cannot get to, that's part of the biological attack, is it's not only the physical joints and motility of my leg not being able to support my weight and cracking, the floors crack, my legs crack. So the physical container, I'm in an 8-foot ceiling. That's 96 inches. That is my ceiling height. That's how tall the ceilings are. I'm not in a 10-foot ceiling container. That tells you time and place of space. The containers I'm built in, because they went from 22-foot ceilings, where I belong, down to 10-foot ceilings of where Mariah and my lineage was going. We followed it, who had 10-foot ceilings, who didn't. And then they started building at 8-foot ceilings. But these are a building statute and code in New York that you can follow the timeline as to how the container got smaller and smaller and smaller, almost crushing. Not in a physical way, if you watch it on special process for forensics use within my genealogy and my genetic counsel, which I still don't have access to. I know they exist. I know they've been collecting the data for me, and I think whoever is in charge of it, I don't know who to reference. I don't know how to get a hold of anybody. The communication standard here has been nil. And when they television on the news, it is a picture that does not actually exist out in real world. Star 1978, star 8378, Nicole Cattaruzza. It's August 5th, 2021. Oh, and with the memory, your brain waves come in a rolling pattern. Usually that's how we represent them, is in a rolling pattern. Unlike there's a thing where if you had a saw blade, like a thin saw blade on a wooden whatever we say, and it's like tin, and it can, after you go like this, and then it vibrates for reverberation. That's what's standing here without a vertical energy support system is like. But secondary to that is your brainwave function does move in that pattern. It's not so much the reverberation of the lack and loss of the vertical horizontal pole of magneticism and support for the body as you walk through the environment that hurts the brainwave function. It is more the highly individualized attacks of magneticism that literally fractalize the aerial space around your cap area, where your head and your capelli are, for skull cap, SKULLCAP. Almost as like the top of your antenna. It's like somebody shoots a high power magnet radio wave directly at your skull area, and the brain wave that was normally doing a nice function, all of a sudden that wave function can't stick together anymore in its state of solid, which is more of like an oblach, but because it's a Edie's force. But anyway, and what they do is they take that rolling brainwave function that gives you a nice steady thought pattern, logic, algorithm, and it looks normal and it makes you look like respectable, and it all of a sudden fractalizes it. And then it no longer is rolling, it is now just bouncing. And then it just in code, it interferes with your ability to produce verbal and actionable function. It makes you incredibly inefficient. It is like one of the worst torture devices that another human could force upon an unsuspecting victim. And that's what's going on in New York right now.